Inside the death factory of Auschwitz-Birkenau. What does a factory look like when its product is death? Most people picture smoke, noise, and rows of machines. Auschwitz-Birkenau had those elements too, though not in the way you might expect. It functioned with timetables, paperwork, storage rooms, and strict routines. That is the part many visitors do not see at first. Auschwitz-Birkenau was not simply a camp surrounded by barbed wire. It was planned with care and expanded with purpose. German authorities chose the site in occupied Poland for practical reasons. Rail lines ran nearby. Space was available for enlargement. What began as a detention camp grew into the largest center of mass murder created by Nazi Germany. More than 1 million Jews were killed there. Tens of thousands of Poles, Roma, Sinti, and Soviet prisoners of war also perished. Those numbers are difficult to grasp, yet the scale alone does not explain how the place operated. The structure behind it does. Transports arrived according to schedule. Cattle cars rolled in day and night. Families were separated without discussion. Some individuals were selected for forced labor. They were registered, tattooed with numbers, and assigned to barracks. Many others were sent directly toward gas chambers. Personal belongings were sorted in warehouses and prepared for shipment back to Germany. Gold teeth were removed. Hair was collected. Clothing was folded and bundled. Nothing was treated as useless. The absence of graves is one of the most striking facts about Auschwitz. There are no rows of headstones, no marked resting places. The bodies were burned and the traces scattered. What remains today are fragments of daily life: a shoe, a comb, a cup, a name written on a suitcase. That is where our deeper look begins. How did ordinary routines become tools of destruction? The answer unfolds piece by piece. On May 16, 1944, at 1:50 in the afternoon, one of the first special transports arrived on the new tracks. Within weeks, more than 430,000 Hungarian Jews were deported to Auschwitz. Many were sent directly from the ramp to the gas chambers without ever entering the camp proper. Photographs from that period survived through unlikely circumstances. After the war, a survivor named Lily Jacob found an album in a former SS building. When she opened it, she saw images taken on the ramp at Birkenau. She recognized her own family among the faces. One picture shows her brother standing in the crowd. He looks straight at the camera. He does not know what will happen next. The image freezes him at the edge of a moment he cannot foresee. Visitors who see that photograph today often stop longer than they plan. The boy's eyes meet theirs without accusation, yet they do not release the gaze easily. The ramp was a place of noise and urgency. The photograph preserves a single second of stillness. Auschwitz relied not only on guards and dogs, but also on desks and ink. Inside the camp stood a civil registry office. Clerks recorded deaths with careful handwriting. Causes were listed as pneumonia, heart failure, kidney inflammation, or stroke. In one rare case, that same registry recorded a marriage. Rudolf Friemel, an Austrian prisoner, received permission to marry Margarita Ferrer in 1944. Approval came from Heinrich Himmler himself. The ceremony was simple. Papers were signed. A photograph was taken. For one night, husband and wife were allowed to stay together. Months later, Rudolf Friemel was executed for involvement in resistance activity. The registry that once recorded his wedding later entered his death. The camp's routines did not pause for long. Auschwitz also functioned with attention to cost and supply. Warehouses near the camp were filled with property taken from victims. Prisoners called them Canada, a word that suggested wealth and plenty. Inside were shoes, coats. Items were sorted and shipped to Germany. Hair was packed into sacks and sold to companies that used it for fabric and felt. Clothing was cleaned and redistributed. Construction files show that building materials were counted carefully. Iron was scarce during the war. Requests for rails, beams, and roofing were approved in stages. The extension of the Birkenau ramp required hundreds of tons of metal. The language of factory management applies with disturbing accuracy. Production targets were discussed. Transport capacity was calculated. Timetables were drawn up. The phrase death factory is not a figure of speech. It reflects the structure that stood there. Amid this machinery, acts of resistance still appeared. In 1941, a Polish prisoner named Tadeusz Pietrzykowski was challenged to box a German criminal inmate for the amusement of guards. Pietrzykowski weighed barely 42 kilograms. His opponent was strong, well-fed, and trained. He agreed to fight. The gloves were not proper boxing gloves. They were work gloves padded with rags. Prisoners gathered in a rough circle. Guards watched, expecting entertainment. The fight unfolded differently. Pietrzykowski moved quickly. He avoided heavy blows. He struck back with precision. The stronger man began to bleed. At the end, Pietrzykowski stood upright, while his opponent conceded. His reward was bread and a portion of meat. In the camp, that meant survival. He shared it with others. Years later, one of his gloves entered the memorial collection. It is a small object. It carries weight beyond its size. The story of Auschwitz leaves a question that does not rest easily. Bernhard Walter, believed to have been one of the SS photographers who documented arrivals at Birkenau, had a newborn son who died shortly after birth. He knew personal loss. He experienced grief within his own family. Yet he stood on the ramp and photographed Jewish children who were sent to their deaths. How does a person hold private sorrow and public cruelty at the same time? The record offers no simple explanation. The answer lies somewhere between obedience, belief, ambition, and moral collapse. The perpetrators were not creatures beyond human nature. They were men with names, careers, families, and choices. Auschwitz-Birkenau was built to erase people. It aimed to remove names, faces, and futures. What remains today are fragments, shoes behind glass, a reversed letter in iron, a wedding record, a boxing glove, a photograph of a boy on a ramp. The system succeeded in killing millions. It did not succeed in erasing memory. Memory remains. It is quiet, yet it endures. If this account has stayed with you, pass it on. History demands attention, not comfort. Subscribe for more careful examinations of the events that shaped our world, and return for the next chapter.